The diplomatic envoy from the Galactic powers arrived with all the grandeur and pomp expected of a major interstellar event. Ships of immense size and complex design hovered just outside Earth's atmosphere, sending ripples through the global communications network. News channels exploded with coverage, speculating wildly about the aliens' intentions. The general consensus was a mix of fear and awe, as humanity braced for the unknown. Inside the United Nations headquarters, a select group of world leaders and military personnel prepared for the meeting. The ambassador sent to represent Earth was a young woman named Clara Ortega. She was a strategic mind, sharp and composed, someone who had risen to prominence not through her military rank, but through her unparalleled understanding of diplomacy and human resilience. Clara had been chosen not just because of her skills, but because humanity had long prepared for this day, understanding that their response to the galactic powers could shape the future of Earth. The alien envoy, led by a towering figure named Zorath, stepped onto the stage. Zorath, a member of the Vornathi, a reptilian species known for their aggressive expansion across the galaxy, exuded an air of superiority. His people were the dominant force in the region, having conquered numerous star systems with overwhelming military force. They assumed Earth would be an easy conquest, or perhaps just another planet to add to their collection. Zorath's first words echoed through the massive hall, his voice deep and authoritative. "We come in peace, for the benefit of both our species. The resources of your world have caught our attention. We are prepared to offer you a place among the Galactic Coalition, if only you meet our terms." Clara, standing tall before the massive crowd, regarded Zorath with a quiet intensity. She was unshaken, her voice steady when she finally spoke. "We are grateful for your offer, Ambassador Zorath, but humanity's place in the galaxy is not one of submission. We have no intention of becoming part of any empire, nor will we hand over our resources without understanding the full consequences." Zorath's reptilian eyes narrowed slightly, an unsettling stillness filling the room. It was clear that Clara's response had caught him off guard. He had expected a more typical reaction. Fear, perhaps, or eager submission. But humanity was proving more complicated than anticipated. The Galactic Council has seen your species as weak and underdeveloped. Do not mistake our goodwill for weakness. Our empire spans thousands of systems. You will comply, or we will take what we need by force. Clara's lips curled into a subtle smile, one that went unnoticed by most in the room, but not by those who truly understood the implications. She leaned forward, her tone cool, almost calculating. "You misjudge us. We are neither weak nor underdeveloped. If your intentions were peaceful, you would have learned much more about us before making demands." The room fell into a tense silence. Zorath's patience began to fray as he processed her words. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in his gaze. How could this species, seemingly primitive, its technology centuries behind their own, speak with such confidence? He had underestimated them. The realization hit him like a sudden jolt, but before he could respond, Clara spoke again. "We may not be the strongest species in the galaxy, but we've learned how to survive. And we'll fight to protect our world, no matter who stands against us." Zorath's voice remained composed, but the weight of his words now carried a dangerous edge. "Do not test us, human. We offer you a place of power, but if you refuse, we will see you as enemies." Clara's expression didn't falter. "Then consider this a warning. Never underestimate humanity." The first contact, once expected to be a moment of submission, had instead become a declaration. The aliens had come expecting to find prey, but they had found something far more dangerous, a species capable of standing its ground, a species that would not be easily swayed. As Zorath turned to leave, a faint ripple of unease spread through the ranks of the Galactic envoys. The humans had not cowered. Something about them felt different. Clara watched them depart, her thoughts already turning toward the future. She knew one thing for sure: Earth had just entered a new phase of its existence. And no one, not even the galactic powers, was prepared for what was to come next. The diplomatic meeting had ended with a delicate tension hanging in the air. The alien envoy left Earth's atmosphere with a sense of unease, their leader Zorath pondering the unexpected defiance from a species they had long regarded as insignificant. Meanwhile, on Earth, the ripple effects of the encounter were beginning to spread far and wide. Clara Ortega, despite the outward calm, couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous. She sat in the debriefing room with the top military minds of Earth, the atmosphere thick with unspoken thoughts. Everyone had questions, but Clara's mind was already racing ahead. Did anyone else notice the cracks in their composure? She asked, her voice quiet but firm. General Maxwell, a seasoned officer with decades of experience, leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Zorath's people are not known for their restraint. They've taken planets before, but they've never encountered a species like us. We aren't the soft, naive beings they assumed we were. Clara nodded, her gaze distant as she pieced together what had happened. We've been preparing for this for a long time. Ever since the first signals from deep space, we knew the galaxy was watching us, and we've had time to study them. The galactic powers. They think we're just a resource, a pit stop on their way to greater things. General Maxwell shook his head. They underestimated us. But why did they only make contact now? After all these years, why wait until now to reach out? Clara's eyes darkened as she spoke. Because they were waiting for us to grow weak, for us to show signs of vulnerability. They wanted to see if we would ever be a threat. Now they know, we're not just a threat. We're an unknown quantity, and they don't like it. For the next several hours, the debriefing continued with intense discussions about Earth's capabilities, both militarily and scientifically. As the meeting wound down, Clara found herself alone in her office, staring out over the cityscape. She didn't feel relief. There was no victory in the encounter, only the weight of what was yet to come. The truth she had withheld from the public, from the rest of Earth's leadership, was far more complex than anyone realized. Humanity had not only survived the countless challenges of Earth's history, but had learned from them. Their evolution had been marked by not just survival, but by an uncanny ability to adapt, to evolve and dominate in ways that no other species had anticipated. Clara leaned back in her chair, thinking of the years of preparation. The world's governments, long before the aliens arrived, had created an intelligence network dedicated to studying the galaxy, gathering information on the alien species, their technologies, and their weaknesses. It wasn't just military-powered humanity had been developing. It was knowledge. Knowledge that could be used as a weapon. The great strength of humanity had always been its ability to learn from its mistakes. Early humans had fought tooth and nail to survive against more formidable predators, and they'd built empires from the ashes of defeat. They weren't the first species to evolve into predators. They were simply the most successful at it. Humanity's adaptability was unmatched, and that was what made them dangerous. The alien invaders had assumed they could come to Earth and dictate terms. They believed humanity was still in the primitive phase of evolution, thinking the human race would cower before their advanced technology. But Clara knew better. She knew the truth, that Earth had been a testing ground for humanity's ingenuity, and their greatest weapon was not in their weapons, but in their minds. As days passed, the reality of the situation set in. The galactic powers would not give up easily. They had resources, alliances, and weapons far beyond anything Earth had seen. But humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to fight back, to survive against impossible odds. And now, as the world began to understand the true nature of the challenge they faced, a new resolve settled over the planet. Humanity wasn't just going to survive. It was going to show the galaxy who the real predator was. The story of Earth was far from over, and humanity would not go quietly into the night. Weeks passed since the first contact, and while the galactic powers seemed to retreat into their high-tech ships and distant worlds, humanity was already preparing for what they feared was the inevitable. The quiet hum of Earth's military might began to grow louder, but most of the world remained unaware of just how much had changed. People went on with their daily lives, living in the shadow of an unseen storm. But the storm was already brewing. Reports began to filter in from distant sectors of space. A high-tech colony orbiting a dying star had gone silent. There were no distress signals, no reports of malfunction. Just eerie, absolute silence. At first, it was written off as a technical issue or a routine failure. But then, another colony disappeared in the far reaches of the galaxy. The same pattern, the same unsettling void where once there had been thriving communities. In the Galactic Council chambers, the leaders were beginning to grow uneasy. The first few disappearances could be dismissed as accidents, but when an entire settlement, a well-fortified hub of Vornethi commerce, vanished without a trace, panic began to creep in. Zorath, the leader of the Vornethi, had been among the first to dismiss the humans as insignificant. But now, he couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that their disappearance might not be random. He called a meeting with his closest advisors. "We have lost contact with 3 major colonies in the last 2 months," Zorath growled, his voice tense with frustration. "Each one more advanced than the last. Our enemies are no longer just lurking in the darkness. They are systematic. They are hunting us." The room fell into a heavy silence. The Vornethi were known for their might, their ruthless pursuit of conquest, but even they had never faced an enemy that could attack without warning, without leaving a single clue. Their military minds were trained to respond to direct threats, to fight battles, to crush opposition. This, however, was different. This was a predator stalking them from the shadows. "We need to think carefully," one of the council members spoke up, his voice edged with uncertainty. "Who would have the capability to wipe out our colonies without leaving a trace? Who could do this to us?" Zorath's eyes narrowed. "There is only one species in the galaxy that could do this, and that species has been playing us for fools." The realization dawned on him. The humans weren't just surviving. They were waging a war of intelligence, patience, and perfect strategy. Earth had never been the helpless, primitive species the galactic powers thought they could control. Humanity had been playing the long game, learning everything they could about their would-be conquerors, waiting for the right moment to strike. Back on Earth, Clara Ortega had already begun to feel the weight of what was happening. The disappearances were no accident. She knew, just as surely as she knew her own heartbeat, that Earth was the cause. It was a calculated move, one she had authorized in secret, long before the galactic powers even set foot on Earth. Humanity had not been waiting to defend their world. They had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to show their true nature. The first few disappearances were a warning. Earth was testing its adversaries, watching them squirm as they tried to make sense of the chaos. "What do you think they'll do next?" General Maxwell asked Clara during a strategy meeting. Clara's eyes were focused, her hands steepled as she considered the question. "They'll think it's a coincidence at first. Then they'll start to make the connection. And when they do, they'll begin to realize the truth. They're being hunted." Maxwell looked uneasy. "And once they know, they'll come after us in full force." Clara's lips curled into a grim smile. "Let them come. We've been preparing for this moment since the first signal from space. Humanity is no longer the prey. We are the predators." The first signs of trouble had begun. But for Clara and her team, it was only the beginning. The galactic powers had made a grave mistake by underestimating Earth. Now, the hunt was on. As the disappearances spread, panic started to take root within the galactic powers. The pattern was undeniable. Entire colonies were vanishing without a trace, and the one thing all the affected systems had in common was their proximity to Earth. Despite their overwhelming technological superiority, the alien forces could not find any clear explanation for these mysterious events. Zorath and the other leaders of the Galactic Council convened in an emergency meeting, their faces grim. It was clear that something far more dangerous than they had anticipated was happening. Zoreth stood at the head of the table, his claws tapping impatiently against the smooth surface. There's no mistake now. Someone is targeting us, and I believe we know who. The room went silent. The tension was palpable. The humans, one of the advisors spoke, his voice low with disbelief. They've been too quiet, too cooperative. But now, it's a warning. Zoreth nodded slowly, his mind working through the implications. We thought them primitive, harmless. But we've underestimated them. Earth has never been weak, just hidden in plain sight. They have been preparing for this moment for far longer than any of us could have imagined. A few of the other members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. How could they have done this? Another advisor asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. We've seen no sign of advanced weaponry or even the slightest sign of aggression. They don't have the means to match our fleets. That's the problem. Zoreth responded sharply. They don't need fleets. They've built something far more dangerous. Knowledge. Earth has spent centuries studying us, learning everything about our weaknesses. They've been preparing for an invasion long before we made contact. The revelation hit hard. The Vornethi, along with their allies, had always relied on their technological dominance. They took worlds by force, with overwhelming firepower, but Earth had never been the type to fight with raw power. Instead, humans had fought with cunning, with subtlety, and with intelligence. Zoreth, despite his arrogance, could not deny the truth now. Humanity had outwitted them at every turn. While the galactic powers had spent their time expanding their empires, Earth had quietly observed, taking note of every alien race, their strengths, their flaws, and most importantly, their vulnerabilities. The Vornethi had assumed that humans were no different from the countless species they had conquered before, but Earth wasn't like the others. The humans' greatest weapon wasn't their military or their technology. It was their ability to adapt, to learn, and to evolve faster than any species the galaxy had ever seen. Back on Earth, Clara Ortega sat with her team in a secure, undisclosed location. The lights were dim, the only sound the soft hum of the advanced systems working in the background. The data they had gathered over the years was now fully understood. The galaxy's secrets were no longer unknown to humanity. Earth had not just learned about the alien races, it had infiltrated their systems, their communications, and their plans. Every move the galactic powers made was being watched, studied, and anticipated. "We've done it," Clara said quietly, staring at the large holographic map of the galaxy displayed before her. "They think they've been hunting us, but we've been hunting them. We've been preparing for this moment, and now they're beginning to realize that their greatest mistake was assuming we were weak." General Maxwell crossed his arms, his expression stern. "They'll retaliate. They'll send everything they have to crush us once and for all." Clara nodded, but there was a determined fire in her eyes. "Let them come. We have the knowledge, the resources, and the will to survive. The galaxy will learn the hard way. Earth was never meant to be conquered. We were meant to conquer." In the cold void of space, the galactic powers were beginning to recognize the true nature of their enemy. Earth had always been the predator. Now, the galaxy would see that they were the prey. As the days passed, the atmosphere around Earth grew more charged. The quiet, methodical strikes against the galactic powers' colonies were no longer subtle. News networks around the world began to catch wind of the strange disappearances, but the full extent of the devastation was still kept under wraps. To the public, it appeared as though Earth had merely become a pawn in a galactic game. What they didn't know was that humanity had already set the stage for war. Zoreth stood before his fleet commanders, the once immense confidence in his eyes replaced by hard, anxious resolve. His species had never faced a threat like this before, and every failed mission to trace the attackers only deepened the fear that something far darker was at play. "We've made a critical misstep," Zoreth growled, his voice laced with frustration. "The humans have already seen through our every move. They know us better than we know ourselves. We're no longer in control of this situation. The fleet commanders exchanged uneasy glances. The pride of the Vornathi, built on conquering worlds with superior might, was faltering. They were unaccustomed to being outwitted by a species they considered inferior. "The time for diplomacy has passed," Zorith continued, his tone hardening. "We strike now. Everything we have. We will crush Earth before they have a chance to retaliate further. All remaining colonies in proximity to Earth are to be reinforced, and we will begin a full-scale invasion. No more subtlety. This ends now." The fleet commanders nodded, their expressions a mixture of fear and resolve. They had never faced an enemy who could attack from the shadows, who could understand their tactics and predict their every move. Humanity had become a phantom in the galaxy, and now the Vornathi were determined to exterminate it. Meanwhile, Clara Ortega was in a war room deep underground, her team working tirelessly to analyze the incoming reports. The moment Zorith had made his declaration of war, Clara had known the time for subtlety was over. The galactic powers were mobilizing. It was only a matter of time before they came for Earth with everything they had. "We've got about 72 hours before they make their move," Clara said, her voice low but filled with a cold determination. "We need to strike first. Now we have to push them back with everything we've prepared." General Maxwell, standing next to her, nodded grimly. "We've been waiting for this. Every ship, every satellite, every covert operation we've set up. It's all led to this moment. The Vornathi want to play rough. Let's show them what Earth can really do." Clara pressed a button on the console, bringing up a holographic display of Earth's defenses, hidden in plain sight. What the galactic powers didn't realize was that humanity had weaponized its own world. Every resource, every technological advancement Earth had developed in secret was now ready to be used against the invaders. The Vornathi were about to learn the hard way that Earth was not only prepared for war, it was the battlefield itself. "We have the advantage," Clara said, her voice steady. "They may have more ships and better firepower, but they've never fought a war like this. They've never fought on a planet that knows its own terrain like we do. Earth's defense systems are beyond anything they've encountered." General Maxwell's eyes narrowed. "We're about to send them a message they'll never forget." The countdown had begun. The first offensive strikes would be launched in under a day. But Clara knew this war would not be won quickly. The Vornathi were relentless. They would not back down easily. But humanity had something the galactic powers did not: the spirit to fight, to adapt, and to survive. The fate of Earth now hung in the balance. The final act had begun, and there would be no turning back. Earth's defense systems, from hidden satellites to underground military bunkers, were all in motion. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what true power meant. The Predator had finally revealed itself. The first wave of the Vornathi fleet arrived with devastating speed. Hundreds of ships, massive and heavily armed, tore through the fabric of space toward Earth. The warning alarms blared across the globe, a chilling sound that sent a shiver down the spine of every human. Yet, even as the ships approached, there was no panic. Earth was ready. Clara Ortega stood at the heart of the command center, watching as the holographic display of Earth's atmosphere filled with the incoming fleet. There was no turning back now. She turned to General Maxwell, whose face was grim but determined. "We've trained for this," she said quietly. "We've spent years preparing for this day. It's time to show them that Earth will not fall." Maxwell nodded, clenching his jaw. "They'll hit hard. But we're not unprepared. The satellites are activated, the shields are online, and the first wave of counterattacks is ready. They'll know soon enough. They're up against something they've never faced before." Clara's eyes flicked to the control panel, where the countdown clock was ticking down, marking the seconds until Earth's first offensive would begin. She didn't need to look to know what was coming. She had already given the order. "Launch," she said. At her command, a fleet of ships, equipped with the best weaponry humanity had developed in secret, launched from Earth's atmosphere. The first wave of human fighters rocketed into the void, equipped with high-powered energy weapons designed specifically to disrupt alien technology. Their speed and agility, a direct result of years of training and preparation, gave them the upper hand in the initial skirmishes. The battle above Earth was unlike anything the Vornethi had ever experienced. They had expected resistance, yes, but not this kind of resistance. The first Vornethi ships were taken out by precise, coordinated strikes, their shields failing under the barrage of humanity's advanced weapons. It was a terrifying reality for the alien invaders. Earth wasn't just fighting back, it was fighting smart. Across the sky, the Vornethi began to regroup, sending in reinforcements to deal with the surprising human offensive. But each wave of ships met the same fate. Earth's defenses were built into the very planet itself. Underground bunkers, hidden bases, and advanced energy shields dotted every continent, ready to activate at a moment's notice. And Earth's weapons, though not as numerous, were more than capable of hitting targets with deadly precision. Back on the ground, military forces mobilized at the same time. Ground troops, equipped with exoskeletons and powered armor, moved swiftly across Earth's surface, securing key locations and repelling any alien forces that attempted to make landfall. Cities that had been deemed unimportant by the Vornethi were suddenly transformed into strongholds, fortifications, and bases of operation. Humanity's adaptability was on full display. Clara watched the battle unfold on the large display, her mind calculating the next steps. The Vornethi were relentless, but they were not prepared for the scale of Earth's response. Their ships were fast and strong, but they didn't have the advantage of knowing the terrain. They didn't have the strategic advantage of being on home ground. "We're holding them off," General Maxwell said, his voice tight with controlled excitement. They didn't expect this. "We're actually turning the tide." But Clara knew it was too early to celebrate. The first wave was only the beginning. The Vornethi still had far more ships, and the true test was yet to come. "We've only just started," Clara replied, her voice calm. "The real battle is still ahead. We need to be ready for the second wave." She turned to the officers around her, each of them fully aware of the stakes. This was no longer a skirmish. This was a war for survival. Earth had already proven that it could strike back. But now, the galaxy would learn that humanity was not only capable of defending itself, but also of becoming the most dangerous predator in the universe. And as the battle raged above and below Earth's surface, one thing was clear. The galactic powers had underestimated humanity, and they were about to learn just how deadly that mistake would be. As the battle raged above Earth, the sky itself seemed to burn with the intensity of the conflict. The Vornethi fleet, though massive, was now in disarray. Their once mighty ships, designed to overwhelm any opponent, were crumbling under the relentless assault from humanity's advanced defenses. Earth's fighters continued to target their vulnerabilities. Shields were shattered, propulsion systems disabled, and entire divisions of Vornethi forces were wiped out in mere moments. But even as the tide appeared to be turning in humanity's favor, Clara Ortega knew that the worst was yet to come. The Vornethi were nothing if not relentless. They would not stop until they had crushed Earth beneath their heel. And if their first wave had faltered, it was only a matter of time before the second wave arrived. And with it, the full might of their power. "We've got incoming," General Maxwell said, his voice strained as he watched the latest updates on the holographic display. "The second fleet is on its way, and they're bringing everything. We're running out of time." Clara's eyes darted across the map. The first wave had been a test, a way for the Vornethi to gauge Earth's capabilities. But now, they were coming for real. This would be the decisive moment. If humanity could hold on, they might just have a chance at victory. But if they faltered, the consequences would be catastrophic. "We need to push back harder," Clara said, her voice calm, yet filled with urgency. "We can't wait for them to strike first. If we let them regroup, we'll lose our advantage." Maxwell nodded, his jaw tight. "We're ready. The new weapon systems are online. It's all or nothing now." Clara's mind raced as she processed the incoming data. Earth had never fought a war like this before. The very survival of humanity rested on their ability to adapt and fight with the full strength of everything they had learned in the years leading up to this moment. The Vornathi might have had superior numbers, but humanity had the home ground, and they had the resolve to turn the tide of any battle. The next few minutes felt like hours. Across the globe, military leaders gave orders to launch everything they had. Hidden missile silos beneath the ocean released their payloads, delivering devastating precision strikes against the incoming alien ships. At the same time, human fighters locked into formation and descended upon the fleet, moving like a well-oiled machine, each pilot knowing their role, each ship ready to strike. On the ground, Earth's forces stood ready. Exoskeleton-clad soldiers lined the streets, their guns aimed at the sky, waiting for the moment when they would face the enemy on the ground. Major cities, once teeming with civilians, had now become fortresses, surrounded by walls of military technology and defense systems. Every inch of Earth was a battleground. The Vornathi's second wave arrived in full force. Larger ships, more weapons, more firepower. They were prepared to crush Earth's resistance once and for all. But as they descended into Earth's atmosphere, they found themselves under heavy fire from unexpected sources. Earth's greatest weapon had never been its fleet or its technology. It was the very environment they had mastered. Humanity's ships, small but fast, darted around the massive alien vessels, dodging fire and attacking weak points with brutal precision. Each strike sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, leaving the Vornathi reeling. They had underestimated the Earthlings' capacity for innovation, their willingness to fight for survival. And in that moment, the battle shifted. It wasn't just a fight for dominance. It was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. Clara watched from the command center as the data streamed in. Earth's forces had managed to hold their ground, but the Vornathi were still pressing forward. Their ships were tough, but the sheer adaptability of Earth's forces, its ability to improvise, to use every resource to its advantage, was proving to be too much for the invaders to handle. "They're pulling back," Maxwell said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They're retreating." Clara felt a surge of relief, but it was fleeting. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The Vornathi had tasted defeat, but they would return. And when they did, Earth would be waiting. The Vornathi fleet had retreated, but the victory felt hollow. Earth's forces had held their ground, and the alien invaders had been forced to pull back, their ships damaged and their morale shattered. Yet, Clara Ortega knew that this was only a temporary respite. The Vornathi, though wounded, would not give up so easily. They were relentless, and the threat of their return loomed like a dark cloud over the planet. Back in the command center, Clara stood, watching the tactical map that displayed the damage done to Earth's defenses and the scattered remains of the Vornathi ships. The battle had been fierce, but humanity had proven something crucial. They could stand against the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known. "We've won this round," General Maxwell said, his voice weary but resolute. "But we both know this is far from over. They'll come back. They have to." Clara nodded, her gaze fixed on the map. "We can't afford to rest. We've seen how they fight, and now we know their weaknesses. The next battle will be bigger. They won't underestimate us again." The tension in the room was palpable. The Vornathi's withdrawal had been sudden, a sign that they were reorganizing for another strike. But what humanity had gained was time, the precious time needed to fully mobilize, to repair their defenses, and to prepare for the final confrontation. "Have all the strategic points been reinforced?" Clara asked, turning to her second-in-command. "Yes," came the reply. "The global defense network is at full strength. We've re-established communication with all the major cities and military outposts. We've also begun fortifying the most vulnerable areas. They'll find Earth much harder to conquer this time." Clara gave a brief nod. She had always known that the Vornathi would return, but this time they would face a different Earth, one that had learned, adapted, and become stronger in the face of adversity. "We'll strike first," Clara said firmly. "We won't wait for them to regroup. We'll show them that humanity doesn't just defend, it fights back. It's time to turn the tables." As the orders went out, humanity's fleet gathered once again. The first wave of fighters launched into the void, carrying with them the experience and knowledge gained from the previous battle. The battle had given Earth a vital advantage. They knew the Vornethi's tactics, and they knew how to strike when the enemy was weakest. In deep space, the Vornethi fleet was regrouping. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they faced the consequences. Zorath stood on the command deck of his flagship, his gaze cold and unforgiving. "They are more resourceful than I thought," Zorath muttered to his advisors. "But they will pay for this. We will not retreat again." The Vornethi's war machines hummed to life as they prepared for the final push. Their ships were damaged but not destroyed. They were formidable, and their thirst for conquest remained unquenched. Yet, Zorath knew that this time would be different. The humans had proven themselves to be far more dangerous than he had imagined. But he was a leader of the Vornethi, and he would not let this small species stand in his way. "You will see, Earth," Zorath hissed under his breath. "You will see just how far we are willing to go to crush you." As the two forces prepared for the final showdown, Clara stood once more at the command center, her heart resolute. Earth had proven its worth in battle, but now the stakes were even higher. She knew that the next encounter would decide the fate of humanity and the galaxy. Humanity had never backed down from a fight, and this would be no different. The battle ahead would not just be for survival, it would be for dominance. Earth would not just defend itself, it would make the galaxy understand that it was no longer the prey. It was the predator. As the Vornethi fleet moved into position, Earth's forces closed in, ready for the final reckoning. The galaxy had seen nothing yet.